lawyers do need to keep in mind so many different aspects while trying to provide legal assistance to people going through these kind of offenses. Um, but what happens is that not all of the people can reach out to the lawyer immediately, and when they try to file an FIR, they find resistance from law enforcement. So, could you talk us through what you would recommend people do? Is there a way for them to assert themselves a bit more? Just how they could do it before they have the opportunity to reach out to a lawyer, perhaps?
Thank you, Kostba. Thank you, DF. Bishakha ji, I think what you said has is very interesting and opens a new facet out in the way that we deal with uh, uh, digital violence in the way that it occurs over and over again. And like you're saying, I think one part of it is digital literacy, one part of it is what digital civics. How do you behave in an online space? What are the boundaries? What are the rules? But then thereafter, I feel that we also see it's reflective of who we are as a society. It's simply an online reflection of who we are as a society. So, women having access to spaces, in any case, public spaces is rare. In the digital space, the assumption is, and I think so much of our politics has been around it, that an empowered woman is a forward woman is equal to a sexually depraved woman is the sort of analogy that will go into all the language. So what you find is that the first set of response is hesitation, because you will be questioned about your motivation, which is where the hesitancy comes in. Why did you speak to the boy? Why did you go onto this platform? Why did you put up this video? Right? And the dichotomy of this is that spaces like what was TikTok, now banned in India, but I would say Reels and all of this, give spaces to otherwise people who cannot express themselves in a public sort of way to use tools and technology to express themselves. It starts so simply, but it's also a way of them sort of asserting their own their little space within the digital frame. Now that that happens, I would say that while I agree with ma'am that we need to have a long term vision, which is monetary fines, I think that the other problem is that we are in a very weird situation where technology companies essentially found the problems and were asked to regulate it, rather than the government first engaging with the question that when this is happening and this interface occurs, how are we going to respond as the state, keeping two very, very important sort of aspects in mind. One is freedom of speech and expression. The second is protecting the rights of those who are expressing themselves freely. And what the state has done post facto is that they've used the fact that they didn't create norms as things were evolving and dealing with the problem and coming back retrospectively with very draconian norms. So, rights based activists themselves also feel very nervous about using frameworks that the government in India at least has created. Because once you start accessing it for one person or for one individual act, it comes down and it becomes difficult for anybody else to also, when once you use it and legitimize that space, some the government's own draconian actions gets legitimized. So people are also activists, uh, leaders, etc., nervous using those spaces. Um, so I'm parking that there. What I would say to an individual is simply this: that currently, since you use the digital space, I'm assuming that you have access to the internet on a more regular basis. One is this idea of zero FIRs. The law exists now that you don't have to go to police station to register an FIR. You can go online and write a complaint, it gets recorded. Post that, what action has to be taken, that's when you can then go to a lawyer, right? So first, getting it registered through a zero FIR is a very easy solution currently. It's not, it's simply a tool, again, I would say, for documentation. It will not necessarily lead to any kind of action against the person, but is essentially the first step of documentation. Then you come to a lawyer, the lawyer will say, okay, have they registered something? You write a reminder, then you go to your, what we do as lawyers will, we go to the magistrate, we'll say, listen, we registered this FIR, they are not taking action. Kindly, do an investigation and sort of under section 200. So then you get into the legal process. But like the legal process, if it's on the criminal side, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of gumption on the side of the complainant, I would say, to be able to deal with so much trauma that comes with expressing the fact that you've had a problem. Because on most occasions it has to do with a woman expressing herself, right? So if it's a dating app where the girl has gone on and the date has, or the guy has started e-stalking her, or sort of or physically stalking her after a date or two, the first question will be, why the app, why did you go there? And then dealing with the family themselves. So what we have to also, I would say that our biggest problem is witness protection. Essentially, how do you protect the person who comes to give the complaint, and the state to be sensitized enough to deal with the consequences that come socially after she makes that complaint, right? And their organizations and lawyers need to come together to provide a sort of cushioning that you can say, okay, this is, of course, this is going to take 10 years for you to get justice. And you have to be very realistic about our timelines, because, of course, you'll go through trial, then you'll go through an appeal at least, and then you'll sort of find something. And I feel that that's what, so one side of it is that you have to get the person ready for the long battle. Second side of it is that you have to create spaces through lawyers, through civil society groups, to cushion them as they go through the battle. Because a lot of times you will feel like the other side is winning. What have I said? Where police investigation may be shoddy. So you have to continuously be on top of the game. And that is also where I feel that some of our problems lie, in the way that the criminal law system has been created. That the assumption was that the state was going to act on behalf of the victim. But when the first action is against the victim itself, asking कि क्यों किया, why, and then casting aspersions on the character of the person, you sort of close doors. I remember, I think it was one of the members of parliament, I think it was, who tried to register an FIR against a whole bunch of digital sort of complaints, digital harassment that was happening. And I remember her journey was that she would write every day for a week and she could not register a case. And she tried everything trying to register it. And being a member of parliament, making it public that she was doing this, nobody came to her support. Nobody came to her protection. There was no police that came and said, ma'am, we are taking over, you will be protected. So this is where the issue sort of lies. And I think that this journey is important. And I feel that, ma'am, somewhere we need to also have certain people who can take on litigation long term, as in somebody like that member of parliament, somebody like you and me. If we can actually go to court and file something like a civil suit and say, give me money, give me reparation, this is a tortious action, and see where it takes us. Because only when we sort of, as lawyers, we would like you to push the law that there is enough, but compensation is my right. So compensate me, right? Let the state compensate me, or let the individual compensate me. But let me be compensated. Let's see where this goes. But only if we push it. The other side of it is that there is a certain conservativeness that is now creeping it also into the judicial system, in the way that judges review cases. And I just want to leave it there. But I think that only if we sort of knock on the doors of the courts, we'll come to know where they stand and what are they willing to do.
Thank you. You mentioned this part which really drew out my next question, which is that while while complainants are going through this very long and arduous process where they do have hindrances no matter how much privilege they have, how much power they have, it all comes down to this presumption that has really come up against the victim. And this is not something that's in our law technically. We don't presume against a victim. But it's very unfortunate that in practice, this is what happens. And we face a stigma because we want to come forward and assert ourselves. So,
Exactly.
is there anything you would like to just go in depth about what they can do about this stigma, how they need to sort of train themselves really? If they need to go through the judicial process, they need to build a sort of armor really to like combat the kind of stigma, because it's not just enforcement, it's not just institutions, it'll be their family members, it'll be their friends. There's no telling which person is actually going to support you in that instance.
Exactly. So I would say a couple of things. That documentation is very, very important. So clearly document every stage of harassment that has occurred, right? Because whether it's a pattern of behavior, whether it's a one-time thing, also has an impact on how it will be viewed. Second thing that we as people stop. So one part of it is that you document it for your own sake, taking screenshots, noting down whatever has happened, etc. The second part is that you also, once I would say, file e-complaints, even if it doesn't lead to anything, but it creates a legal trail that you had reported to the authorities and they've done nothing. The third thing that I would tell people to do is that please visit. I feel that you should go to the Legal Services Authority as your first step. Anybody can go in at any place. Women and people of certain socioeconomic backgrounds get free legal aid, right? So women get it irrespective of their social and economic class. So you can get access to that. So as women, I would say that's the first thing. Please find your legal aid person. By law, they're bound to support you. So you don't have to go find a lawyer that is going to make money, but at least, or you have to pay huge sums of money to. But the legal aid system should come in. And places like Delhi, etc., the legal aid system is quite good. You'll find a lawyer who's committed and interested. Fourth thing that I would say would then pursue the matter till the end, right? One of the things that I have realized in some of these cases, and I'm not done many, I'm mostly watched and read around it, is that once you start, once you pressurize the, so when you pressurize the police to actually find the end source, because in a lot of times of digital harassment, you don't know who the person is. You know a handle, you know an ID. There may be times when you know the person physically, but a lot of times you will not know them. So getting them to find the last person is where the effort of the police lies. And what the cyber crime, so in Delhi at least, what they've done is they've created a cyber crimes division, and they are supposed to look at all crimes under the IT Act, including crimes of sexual violence, obscenity, etc. So the now what they've also, Delhi police strangely has started doing is that any action that has any digital component, right? So you may be being harassed, physically being stalked, but you also are getting WhatsApp messages or nasty emails, or you're being stalked on Facebook, gets combined and it goes to the cyber wing, right? And now it's there. So suddenly, what I'm noticing is that, and what the police is also informally a lot of times tells you, is that now that wing has so many cases, they're completely bombarded because financial fraud, gender-based online harassment, everything comes onto their doorstep. So even if they require digital footprints of anybody, they want to do call records, anything will come at their doorstep, and they were dealing with it. So they are now overwhelmed. But the thing is that if the state doesn't respond, then I would say please pursue legal action, which is file a 156(3), complaint before the magistrate saying that the state is not investigating properly. And then what I would also say is that organizations like DEF and others have to look at uh, creating an awareness that there are support structures outside the home, right? And outside sort of spaces where they can receive protection. And this is something that the state may or may not do, and the state should do. It's one of the reasons why I would send somebody to Dalsa is that they're equipped to handle things like have a counselor on the team to see how traumatized you are, deal with your trauma, and then give you the right legal advice. But even if you don't reach that place, I feel like organizations like like DF etc. have to provide that protection threshold. Because if a woman has made the effort of filing that first complaint, or is even considering filing that first complaint, they need that protection. But बाकी सब बाद में होता रहेगा. What what is the evidence, whether there's trial, whether you want to go into. But if she feels like she is not going to be heard at the threshold, that's when the battle is lost immediately. So we have to address it at that threshold. And those, one is EFIRs, so that you don't have to engage with the police. You can write your version entirely, cleanly, and in a secure space. Because I'm assuming that that phone, etc., is your secure space. You should be able to access it, use it to make your complaint. Second, that go to the Legal Aid Services Authority. They are bound to look after you. And the last thing I would say is please file for compensation. Right? It's not something big. It's not something that it's a little bit out, but it's sort of taking what ma'am's argument is. But that if you start paying for it, even if the state starts paying for it, to say that you recognize me as a victim of a crime, please pay me because you cannot find the perpetrator. And using that language, if we can get it. Another sort of thing that I've been thinking about since, again, the questions came, is that looking at consumer forums, looking at the district and state level consumer forums to say that I sought protection from the platform and taking the platform to court. Some of us may want to do it like that. To say, listen, I filed this, I told you this guy is harassing me, you've done nothing. So now compensate me. Because your bylaws say that you're supposed to do something. I sign a protection agreement. Let's see how it goes. And in addition to that, currently as the system lies, is that you can file a complaint at your platform level, then you can file a complaint at the ministry level, and if the ministry also doesn't respond to you, then you can file a complaint directly before the police. That's also one sort of system that you have under one of the IT rules of 2021. There's a bit of a confusion around whether those rules have been stayed or not and which platforms come under, but I'm still parking it there that is an option for women to use, because it clearly says first find the platform ombudsperson, then go up to, if they don't respond within a certain duration, then you can find the ministry, go complain before the ministry that they're not listening to me, and then go ahead. But I feel that the consumer courts may be a very interesting way of saying that create protection for me. And 10, 20, 20,000 rupees may not make a big difference, but at the end of the day, if this becomes a route for litigation, then they may feel the burn in their pocket.